Again, I appreciate everyone hanging in here today. I know it's a Friday. We will be wrapping up on time today. No matter if it's impacts to our existing infrastructure and what happens in the gas world or our electric grid, or moving forward to new energy sources, we're going to need a labor force that is available and well-trained in order to be able to handle our transition to a clean energy economy. With us today to talk about the labor side of this is Kate Gibbs. Kate is the Deputy Director of the Engineers Employer Cooperative, ELEC 825, a collaborative trust focused on creating work opportunities for the members and signatory contractors of Local 825 operating engineers. Kate earned her master's in business administration with a concentration in finance from Drexel University's LaBelle College of Business, and a BA from the American University with a double major in public communications and political science. I'm glad to have Kate here today. There you are. Kate, come on.
Thank you so much, Ray, for the kind introduction, and thank you all for hanging in on a Friday afternoon when it's as beautiful as it is. I'll try not to take too much time, and I have some really cool pictures of some of the work we do. So as Ray said, there's a lot of labor and workforce concerns that we have to take into account as we move forward into this new energy future. And operating engineers, for those who don't know, are the men and women who operate heavy construction equipment. So anytime you see a piece of equipment on a construction site, bulldozer, crane, any of the stuff that looks like real-world Tonka trucks, that's run by our members. And when operating engineers first began, this equipment was run by the steam engine. Cranes went from hydraulic, from steam to hydraulic, and from hydraulic to all the autonomous functions we have now. And something that the operating engineers has always been really proud of and has kept part of their history is that instead of fighting technology as it comes, we innovate, we master it, and that way we can continue to have a successful pipeline of workforce even as technologies change. So talking a little bit today about building and maintaining our critical infrastructure, operating engineers work on all types of construction projects, both public and private. We also work on both vertical construction, meaning physical structures that go up, but I would say about 80% of our man hours come from horizontal construction, demolition, infrastructure, site work, those types of things. And so much of what touches us every single day, roads and bridges, water systems, energy, rail, air, all of that infrastructure are projects that our members work on. And so for us, we're agnostic to the form of energy generation. We're going to be building it from generation to distribution and transmission. But we also have an interest in ensuring that the economy is able to continue to flourish and grow, because if we don't have affordable energy, we're not going to be able to work on the private projects such as advanced manufacturing or a company deciding to repave their parking lot because they're growing. If the economy isn't growing, then we don't even get to the conversation of whether something's going to be built union or non-union. So making sure that we strike that balance of investing in our infrastructure, but doing so in a way that keeps the economy moving is really important to us. And something else we want to mention is that New Jersey already has a significant amount of infrastructure, and those assets have been paid for and are still being paid for by ratepayers and taxpayers who happen to be the same people. And so we have a vested interest in making sure that the infrastructure that exists continues to be well maintained, and that we can figure out how can we leverage these existing assets in order to move into newer technologies. So some of the questions that we began asking ourselves as we moved through this transition, assessing our current and future needs, figuring out how we take those needs and develop appropriate training. One of the steps we decided to take was becoming a technical college, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how that's been able to, how we've been able to use that to move towards those goals. And then again, leveraging existing technologies and existing assets so that how do we take what we already know how to do and move it into the future. This is one of a crown jewel facility for the International Union of Operating Engineers. This is in Crosby, Texas. And the reason I wanted to show you this slide is because you will often hear at these conferences, especially about offshore wind, that we have this major skills gap. And I'm here to say it's just not true. The reason that this facility was built in Crosby, Texas is because we already build the lattice platforms that are used for offshore wind for other types of energy. And this facility was put right there in the Gulf so that we could have our members training on it and continue to move forward as the wind industry develops. Another view of Crosby. We're right near our New Jersey Dayton facility. Anybody who's been up and down the New Jersey Turnpike, Exit 8A, that's our facility. We're actually, besides this state-of-the-art facility in Crosby, Texas, ours is probably the best facility in the country. And even though they have this brand new, beautiful facility, we get members and instructors and contractors from all over the country come to our training center in Dayton for our gas pipeline safety courses that we run, because they're that good, and New Jersey has so many unique challenges that other people come here to learn how do we master it. And our instructors are invited out to Texas a lot. More so, it's starting to get troubling because they want us to come out and share our advice with other locals, but we need to make sure that we're continuing to keep our workforce educated. We're continually adopting more and more use of technology in our instruction. The difference between our trade and some of the others is that when they do this on-the-job training, we're handing them the keys to a piece of equipment that's could be 80 tons, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so in order to make sure that we are keeping up with that autonomous training, the GPS and all those new technologies, but doing so in a way that's affordable and safe, we're turning more and more to simulators and virtual reality. This is just some examples of our pipeline safety, why it's so important to make sure that we have people who are highly skilled, well-trained, and credentialed in these various forms of work. And that's something that is really, really important, especially when it comes to offshore wind, because when I talked about that skills gap, we know how to build these things, but there are special licenses and credentialing that are needed from the Global Wind Organization. And we have been trying for about 6 years to partner and provide that training so that when these opportunities come available, our members will be able to work on them. And it's really important because we as taxpayers here in New Jersey are making a very big investment in moving towards this goal with offshore wind. But we need to make sure that in return for that investment, that Americans and especially New Jerseyans are getting these jobs. And if we're not credentialed and we're not licensed, then we can't do them. And so we're ready, willing, and able to partner with European developers so that we can provide that training and work across trades. We already do joint training with carpenters and electricians for the same lattice platforms that we'll use for wind. We use them for other forms of energy generation. Again, this is just part of our, this is a crane safety course, our instructors. So the amount of training, our apprentice program takes 4 years. It really is a huge commitment, and it just goes to show you how many opportunities there are in these industries. But we have to figure out how to balance what I call the double promise. And so with a lot of these, we've heard a lot politically about the green economy and the innovation economy and all these green jobs. And there's been a big push towards making sure that there is equitable representation of workforce. So how do we reach these communities that have traditionally struggled and these populations of people that are traditionally underrepresented in union labor, people of color, women. And so our technical college is one of the ways that we're addressing that. And we are the first union, our local 825 here in New Jersey, the first union in the entire country to become a degree issuing Institute of Higher Learning. So our members we're about to enroll our first cohort of apprentices who will both be enrolled as apprentices and at community college, earning credits towards an associate's degree. So when they graduate, they will not only become journeymen, they will have an associate's degree. And that's, again, not only because we wanted to be able to attract different populations and make our workforce more diverse, but also as the technology continues to be more and more pervasive within our industry, we have to make sure that they're prepared, not only to work on this equipment, but our members are the mechanics who work on this equipment as well. So when you're on site, the last thing you need is, oh no, now the equipment isn't working, we have to stop work. We need to make sure that our members know how to troubleshoot, how to run it, and how to fix it. So continuing with that technical college by having an education focus rather than simply a DOL focus, it's actually allowed us a little bit more flexibility in how we can set goals for attracting women, veterans, people of color. And it's allowed us to be a little bit more nimble. And so I'm really, really excited for this first group of students. Check out 825earnandlearn.com, and you can find out some more information about that program. And this is just some of our training facilities. So the Lattice platform that I was discussing before, as you can see, that's a wind turbine. This is part of our training down in Crosby. And we are working with other partners to try to bring some of this wind training here to New Jersey. So, the results of what we've been working on over the past few years is finally, just becoming the first in the nation to be accredited, which is really, really exciting. And we're hoping that that allows us to go after more grant funding so that we can bring wind and solar training to our facilities. And as I said before, we're a nationally renowned location, and people come from all over the country to utilize our resources, and we work with our management partners. As Ray mentioned, I work for the Labor Management Fund for the operating engineers, which means I represent both the labor side, which is the members of 825, but also the management, the signatory contractors. And we work collaboratively to make sure that we need to provide them with a workforce that's ready to work on day one, that is credentialed, that is trained, and we have to work across trades because our contractors don't just partner with us. They have lots of trade jurisdictions that they work with. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity here in the state. There's a tremendous amount of excitement around this, but it has to be done in a way that is affordable, reliable, feasible, and part of that feasibility is workforce. And just some things I wanted to touch on quickly that are considerations to leave all of you with, since we have so many bright minds in the room, being that right now in New Jersey, 90% approximately, a little bit more, of our energy comes from nuclear and gas. And so when we talk about these timelines, it really starts coming into perspective of, I've been a big believer that if you really want to support the wind and solar industry, you have to support expansion of natural gas. And while, yes, we have better prices here in New Jersey than in the rest of the Northeast, the reason the Northeast prices are so high are because we have a bottleneck problem going on. There's a lot of natural gas that's getting blocked from policies from New Jersey and New York, and unfortunately, that means that prices are going to continue to rise, and that blends into our forward progress on solar and wind, because we need to make sure that ratepayers can afford this, that taxpayers can afford this, and that we have that underlying feasibility and reliability. Another thing I think that we need to discuss is when we talk about the PJM grid updates and what's needed, there's a huge difference between constructing these new generation types, the transmission, the distribution, and so I've heard policymakers talk a lot about, especially with offshore wind, the maintenance jobs. But when I asked, okay, but there's a lot of information on the website about maintenance, what about construction? They kind of scratched their heads. So really having folks in these spaces digging in further to figure out what we actually need, I think is critically important. And as we're all in this economy right now, where the supply chain is still reeling from COVID and from high unemployment, materials costs are going through the roof. And things like material costs increasing, discussion about moving towards electrified heavy-duty vehicles, all of these things are going to continue to put pressure on a downward pressure on workforce, on labor costs. And so it's important that as we're making these really great strides to provide a cleaner, more equitable future, that we're not doing that on the backs of hardworking men and women who are well-trained in these different industries. So I tried to shorten it up a little bit today since we're going a little bit over. I'm always happy to answer any questions. If anybody wants to go see our facility and learn more about the training that we do, I'd be happy to set that up. And thank you so much for giving me time today.